Welcome to the Writing Gals, where we are four sweet romance authors staying up late talking about conferences tonight with Pam Kelley, who so graciously agreed to join us and talk with us about conferences and then also about just publishing in general, because we have heard from our group that she is the whiz. So we're excited to pick her brain. But before that, we are going to find out where we're at. So Victorine, you're smiling really big, so I'm going to go to you first.
Yay, I'm so excited. No, I'm just kidding. Somebody on our Facebook group, so we say that all the time. So now I have to say it every time. I'm so excited. I've been still plugging away at my young adult romance that I'm working on. It's just a girl that overhears a guy make a bet that he can't go out with this girl. And so she's determined to foil that bet. And it's just been a whole lot of fun to shove them together, and she hates him. So I love writing romances where they hate each other, or one of them hates the other one, and the other one's trying to pursue them. So that's super fun.
Awesome. Well, we have been getting little snippets here and there of it, and we like it a lot. In fact, it may have inspired the start of my next book, where I think anyways, this is not about me, but I was like, I want to do a bet one because it seems really fun.
Yes.
This was going to be more of an adult version of a bet, but I think I know where I want to go next. So you have inspired me.
Yay.
So, excited. All right, Judy, what are you up to?
So I've just been busy writing. I've actually been writing the last couple of weeks, which has been good because I was having a couple bad months before that. So I am in my book, Kissing the Boy Next Door, and I've gotten to just over 30,000 words, which is close to halfway, maybe more than halfway. Depends on what I do with it. So yeah.
For Judy, it's never known. It kind of goes up and down, right?
Yeah. Usually my books hit about 70 to 75,000. Sometimes I try to make them shorter and it doesn't work. So we will just see. And so it's just fun writing. Finally, I'm excited about it and hoping to get my characters kissing in the next few days that I'm writing. So that's all I've been doing.
Kisses are always great. Yeah. All right, Pam, what are you up to?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm working on something a little bit different. I usually do sweet contemporary romance, but I'm working on more of a women's fiction. And it's about a mother and her 3 daughters and son and their lives. And it's set on Nantucket. And I live near Nantucket. So I'm kind of having a lot of fun with that.
Okay, I'm totally geography dumb. Where is Nantucket?
Near Boston and Cape Cod.
Massachusetts.
Have you heard of that? In Massachusetts.
Oh, yes. Cool. I've always, the living on the East Coast, like over up there in Massachusetts, just always seems like this, everybody wears like suede coats and boots and everyone looks put together and goes to college. Like that's my view of like that whole area.
Yeah, not so much. See the sweatshirt?
You know how to relax, which is nice. Is it cold up there right now?
2 days ago it was 5 degrees. Today it was 50. So it's kind of all over the place.
Oh my gosh. It's cold here. We're in Minnesota and I think it was like -5. And me and my husband were like, we're moving. This is crazy. Why do we live here? So anyways, well, very cool. We're excited to see this women's fiction come out. So, all right, Michelle, what are you up to?
I am freezing in 30-degree weather here. I was actually thinking the other day, I was like, oh my gosh, how does Amy live where she does? Because it's 30 degrees here and I'm dying.
So, we die, which is pretty much, we stay in our house and we don't go anywhere.
Like, do I have to leave the house? How important is it? Do I sound echoey? Okay. All right. So I have been working on mostly on my Rockstar book, trying to get it finished, and had a super fun critique session with my people here and ended up writing a new first chapter for it. And I feel like it's ready to just roll on out now. And so I actually plan to release it the second week of February. And that's super exciting for me. And I am considering renaming my Regency series. It's always kind of a weird thing. It'll be the 3rd time that I've renamed it. I guess it's a good time to do it before I publish it and make a cover and all that sort of stuff. But I was thinking about the story, and I was thinking about the ease of making covers, and decided that I wanted to focus on the women of the story instead of the men in the story, which I don't know. I feel like men, like we have the billionaires in contemporary, and I feel like in Regency it's going to be going more towards men on the covers and playing up those tropes. So I'm kind of working against everything that I feel like that market is going towards. But it's really hard to make Regency covers if you're doing your own photo shoot anyway. And if I'm trying to find a bunch of men and dress them up in cravats, it's going to be a nightmare. So, and the stories are all about the women. So I'm like, here I go again, trying to just swim upstream. But I think it's going to be awesome. I haven't decided yet. Oh, the things we go through as authors. And then I'm making myself a home office right now. I've been writing at my kitchen table since 2007. And I'm finally graduating to a big person desk. And so I'm really excited. That's what's going on in Michelle land. So
Was very exciting. She's been sending us pictures of her desk. So we've been enjoying those. And for me, I just hit 48,000 words of my work in progress. My goal was to finish it tonight, and I don't think that's going to happen, but I'm very, very close. I pretty much have the let's get together moment and then the epilogue done. So that's all I have. And then it's going to be done. And I got my first 3 chapters edited, and I'm going to start promoting those come tomorrow. I have a free day tomorrow, so lots of stuff going on. And then I just got I literally have all the covers for the 9 books I'm going to publish this year. No, 11 books I'm going to publish this year, all done. And so now I just get to write them. So I'm really excited about that. I finished my photo shoot and got my covers done and was making some promotional material. So if you're part of the Writing Gals Facebook group, you'll see it because it's there. So I'm very excited to just get some books published. I haven't published anything since like mid-December. So I've never gone this long without publishing, but that's because I'm going to publish 2 in February. So February will be a very busy publishing month for me. So we're very excited. And we have all been buying tickets, plane tickets and conference tickets because it's conference time. So, which is why we have Pamela here. And she did not send me a bio. So maybe you can just give us a little bit of an idea of your publishing, marketing, all of that, your writing, when you started. Just give us some of your background.
Yeah, I realized just as this started, I forgot to send the bio.
Okay, totally fine.
So I've been writing forever, always, but I've been publishing for the past just over 5 years. So I first published, I think it was the end of November of 2013. And I'm not even sure how many books I've published. It's 30 something, but it's mostly sweet romance, a couple of mysteries. And then under another name, I've done, I think, 11 sweet historical romances. And I tell people that I know that you're not supposed to genre jump. It's like you should focus on one thing. Whenever I do, my sales go much better. But I like to do other genres too, and I'm going to be doing some different things this year and going back to suspense. So yeah, so that's what I focus on.
Sorry, I couldn't get my mic unmuted fast enough. And you are big on like collaborative series too, which you said you did, but you weren't super happy with, or?
No, I love them. I've done a bunch of them. So, and they actually kind of came about through conferences. So one of the things that I love about conferences is it's a great way, even when you're brand new, to meet people that you've met like in the Writing Gals or in other online groups. And then it's great to meet people online, but then it's so much nicer to take it to the next level and actually meet them in person. And so one of the conferences we went to, I think it was actually the RWA down in the RWA National, just so you know, is the huge one, and every year it's somewhere different. And I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago, it was down in San Antonio. And so that's where I met a bunch of authors from a Facebook group called Pioneer Hearts. And they focus on sweet Western historical. And at the time, I was thinking about writing a Western historical, but I was petrified. I just didn't know if I could do the historical part. I was going to get things wrong. That's why I did a pen name. In case I screwed it up, I could shut it right down. But I met those guys, and then we got to be friends. And then the first collaboration came about just bouncing around ideas. Kirsten Osborne and my friend Cindy Tazi, who writes at Cindy Caldwell, we were talking about doing this crazy idea where we would do the American Mail Order Bride series, and every single book would be set in a different state. And it would start in Massachusetts and Lowell, and we had like this premise set up, and then all of the girls would have to leave and go to a different state. So that was the biggest one, and it was such a project, and it was so much fun. But people thought we were crazy because it was 50 books, 45 authors, and each book released a day apart, and it was over 50 days. I think it went from Thanksgiving to New Year's Eve. And I was even a little bit skeptical. I'm like, oh, maybe that's too many books. I don't know how that's going to go. But we did it, and we had so much fun. And the books actually did really well for a long time. And every now and then we'll do, like, usually at least once a year, we'll do some kind of a sale, maybe like a Mother's Day 99-cent sale or something, just to kind of get a little bit more action on the books. And they're all in KU. So, you know, people read those books every single day. They're like the avid readers in the group. They would just read all the way through. And then at another conference, I think it was a couple of years ago, there were 4 of us that were actually giving our workshop on marketing and multi-author collaborations in Chicago. And we just were sitting around chatting. And again, it was Kirsten and Cindy. And we said, well, maybe we should do this smaller multi-author series. Like 50 people is too many. What if we did 4 or 5? And then that ended up being, we kind of brainstormed the idea of it's going to be these 6 siblings, and they're out in the West on a ranch. And so we kind of just brainstormed it. We invited, you know, Amelia Adams and Caroline Lee to join us. And then we ran that for, I think, 60 books. And they released every 2 weeks. And so that was fun. And now I'm in another one. We ended that one and we did a spinoff. But I stepped back a little bit. I'm not doing as often on it because I wanted to focus on more of my own stuff too. So that's a lot of fun.
Oh, I would love to write historical, just like Western books. I just, like you, I'd be terrified, or I'm terrified, like the research and the everything you have to get right. And but I don't know. I think that would be maybe sometime in the future, I'll take some time and figure out how to write a historical, because I think that would be really, really fun to do.
If you do a series, the first book is the hardest. And then after that, you have your world. And then it's not quite as intimidating.
That's true. Yes, I just hear all these horrible reviews that you get from people that, like, if you don't get things correct. And that's like a hang up for me. Like, what if this is true? What if it's not true? I might get.
Well, you know, what's interesting too is sometimes you can do your research and you find out things and they're accurate, but then you might find out that it's, even though it's accurate, the readers think it's wrong because it's kind of understood that they think it's something else.
Okay, yeah.
I have to kind of watch out for that too.
Interesting. Oh, that's super cool. Well, it sounds like you have been to quite a lot of conferences, so we'll just jump into our first question here. It says Joycelyn Fitch would like to know which conferences you consider to be the most worth it for indie authors, because there are a lot out there. So maybe give us like a rundown of all the ones you've gone to, and then you can maybe go into which ones you think are most valuable and maybe like state, like, this is a lot of questions in one. So if you need me to break it, like maybe if you're a beginning author or you're a moderate or you're an advanced, kind of let's start with which ones you've gone to.
Okay. So I've been to a bunch. I've been to the RWA, Romance Writers of America, the national conference, which is huge. And that's like 2,000 something people. And every year it's held somewhere different. So I go to that conference based on where it's located. If it's somewhere that I want to go. Like I wanted to go to San Francisco and I'd never been there. So I went out there. If it's in New York City, I'll always go there because that's just a short train ride. And when I first started writing, which was like totally part-time and on the side like a million years ago. When I went to New York, that's when everybody was pursuing traditional publishing. And so one advantage of going to that conference, particularly when it's in New York, is that's where like the whole publishing hub is. So they would have all the editors. It'd be like anywhere from 15, 20 editors, 20 agents. And so that's where people could sign up for pitching, and they would have all kinds of just lots of ways to meet and get information about the industry. And they still do that, because there's still people that want to do hybrid, and it's still interesting just to hear what they're buying and what they think about the market too. So that's the huge one. And that could be a little bit intimidating when you're new, but RWA also has all the local chapters. And I think for a new person, that's probably a really good way to start, because like our local one, the New England RWA is in April, and that's always about 200 people, and that's not too intimidating, but they still have really great speakers. It's a nice conference, and it's just a couple of days. And they do those, like Chicago has a great one, New Jersey has a great one. They do them all over the US. So that's a good way to start. Another one that I think would be really good for new people, I haven't been because it's on the opposite coast for me, is the 20 Books Conference. One advantage of that one too is that it's super inexpensive. I mean, they do a really good job of keeping the costs down. I think it's around $129 for the conference, and the hotel rooms are like $50. I mean, it's not a fancy hotel, but it's fine for the conference. So anybody thinking about that, I think this year it's going to be like 800 people is what they anticipate. But it's a mix of experienced people and really new people. And from what I've heard, the energy is just amazing. I mean, it's where if you're in that group, I think where I'm a moderator there, so I see like the daily counts. We have like on average 50 people joining that group a day, which is crazy. It's up to close to 28,000 people. And I think for somebody new, that might be a really nice conference to go to. And I think it's usually in November. So that's a good one for new people.
So for that conference, I've never been to it. Is it, what I see, like they do videos, they post it on YouTube, right, of the conference classes?
They did that for the first conference. For this latest one, I think that they kept it in a private Facebook group. You might still be able to access it. I'm not 100% sure. But you could definitely access a lot of that stuff.
Was it like, because I think a lot of times when you go to conferences, they put so many classes because they want to get as many, attract as many people as possible, that it's like you don't ever get to go to all the classes you want to go to. Was it like one teacher for all the people who went, or did they actually have classes that you picked from?
I'm not sure because I haven't been to that one.
Okay.
I think that they have one or two choices, whereas if you go to the other conferences, you will run into that. So if you go to the RWA ones, you can have anywhere from 4 to 8 sessions all happening at the same time. When you go to the big national one, they have it separated into tracks. So they have an excellent self-publishing track that's gotten better every single year. They'll have a craft track. They'll have like a marketing. So you can kind of pick and choose your classes based on what you want to do. But one thing they do that's nice too is at RWA, they tape or they record almost all of the sessions. And then you can buy individual ones, or you can buy the whole thing for like $100. You can get all the sessions recorded, and you get it like on a little flash drive. They send it to you like a few weeks afterwards, which is nice. So they do that. So let me see other conferences I've been to. If you're interested in genres, there's a lot of like mystery conferences. And I think for sci-fi and other ones they do too. But Thriller Fest in New York City is one of the bigger ones. And it's the most expensive one too. That's one downfall of it, because New York City hotel rooms are expensive. But that's a wonderful conference. Really, really nice craft classes, lots of signings. That's just a really fun one. There's smaller local ones too. Like we do one in New England. It's called the New England Crime Bake, and that's less expensive. on a smaller scale. And that still kind of has, I noticed, I went a couple years ago, you don't see as many indies there still. That's still pretty heavy with trad publishing. And actually Thriller Fest was too. I mean, it was some indies there, but more like they had like a big panel celebrating all of the people that had just sold for the year. So it was like 18 people and it was all traditional publishing deals. And so that's still big in that genre.
Okay. Yeah, when I tried to join my local RWA chapter just here in my city, and everybody that was part of it all wanted to be traditionally published.
Yeah.
They were all just still working on the same book, and I was just kind of like, well, I don't really know what we can add to each other just because I finish a book, I publish it, I move on. I don't keep working on the same book for years and years on end.
Yeah, that's a big trad thing. That's common.
Yeah.
My favorite conference is the NINC conference, which is Novelist Inc. And that one is held every year in St. Pete, Florida. And that's usually it's around the end of September, beginning of October. And that's I'd say like a small to mid-size, about 400 people. And that one, what I like about that is it's a little bit more advanced. So you do have to have published, and I think you need to hit a certain sales level. I think it's 2 books that have sold maybe 5,000 each, I think, something like that. But if once you hit that level and go, it's just really nice because everybody there, you don't have as many of the really beginner questions, so you can get into some more strategic stuff, which is fun.
Are they more indie focused? Novelists Incorporated Inc.
They didn't used to be, but the indies have totally taken over, and it's interesting. I've gone 2 years now, and I've even noticed a difference just in the 2 years. The first year was more indie than I expected, because I had heard that in the past it was very trad focused and they maybe weren't super friendly to indies, but that's not what I found to be the case at all. The president is Wayne Stinnett, who's totally indie. And this year last year it was even more. I think every trad person I saw there was also indie publishing, pretty much.
Oh, okay, cool. So it's a little bit of both.
Exactly.
Well, that's awesome. We're trying to get to NINC this year as us writing gals, because I think we've all hit that level that you need to be to join. So now we're just waiting to get accepted into it. So we're really excited to head down to Florida for that.
One thing they do too is they do an unconference, which is I think a day or 2 before the conference, that you can also sign up for. And that's, I think it's maybe like an extra 20 or 30 bucks, but that's basically just, you spend all day in a conference room and it's kind of just brainstorming, and people say, okay, what do you think about email marketing? And then people just share. It's like a sharing of information. So that could be a lot of fun too.
Oh my goodness, that sounds amazing. Oh, you're making me want to go to all these conferences. Okay.
I'll tell you one thing about the conferences too, though, that a lot of people don't realize is for me, I think it's in a lot of people, it's really almost more about the networking than anything else. And it's, networking in the sense of you're seeing your friends and then you're meeting other people. And we had so much fun at the NINC conference. It's like a whole bunch of us that were already friends. And that's our way that we would like meet up, because everybody's like all over Cindy's out in Arizona, Lee's up in New Hampshire, and we'd all meet at the conference. But then there was another bunch of people that we knew from like another group that we hadn't met in person yet, that we were excited to meet them. And we ended up having so much fun that we didn't want to wait a whole year to go back to NINC. So we put together a mini get together, and we met halfway. We met in a small group of us. I think there was 25 of us met in Charleston, and we set up our own uncon. So we stayed at the beach for it was like 4 or 5 days, and we set up 3 days where we went in a room and we just went around that room, and we had different topics and everybody talked about different things. And it's when you have people that are like selling at different levels, and some of them at pretty high levels, they've done some cool stuff. And so the sharing of information is pretty cool. Or brainstorming, people were talking about launching, different launch plans and things. So, I could talk about that stuff all night.
That's amazing. So put me on the list So next time that happens, you send me an email and we will come. I was actually thinking, I was like, because Pam and I have talked, I don't even know how long we've talked on Messenger for, or how we even got started talking on Messenger. Sorry, that's my book
I'm
report.
not sure. It's been a while though. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was thinking, man, I want to go to, because you were posting pictures on Facebook of you at NINC, and I was like, oh, that looks awesome. So I'm excited. I was like, if we go to NINC, then we can hook up with Pam and Lee and all these people that
get in the inside with the in group.
Yeah, I know, right? Just me and Charleston. But I was thinking, we do that like every Thursday. We get together and we chat here, and people think we have interesting things to say, so they watch us. So
yeah,
it's like we have our own mini con every Thursday here on the Writing Gals. And our dream someday is to have a Writing Gals conference, but that, as Victorine knows, because she's the head of her Nebraska writing chapter thing. I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, Nebraska Writers Guild. And it's kind of going to be a Writing Gals conference because we're all going to be there and we're all teaching classes, and Amy's a keynote, and it's going to be awesome. I'm so excited. So it'll kind of be like a dry run for us, right?
Yes. And then she can be the head person for us from here on out.
Sure.
All right, cool. So we have some people who had specific questions about what to do when you get to a conference. So should you try should we try all the publisher and agent pitches? And then are we more likely to be picked up at a conference? So this is more the trad route.
Actually, yeah. I mean, if that's your goal, I would totally take advantage of it. And another thing too, this is like a way to network, volunteer to do stuff at the conference. Like if you're a member of a local RWA chapter, volunteer for the conference committee. There was one year where my friend Jen and I were on the conference committee, and Janet's job was, I think she was doing something with the agents and editors, and she just got to chatting with one of them, and it wasn't a formal pitch. It was just, she was saying, so what do you write? And she's like, oh, I just finished this book and blah, 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 blah. She goes, oh, that sounds really good. You should send it to me. And Janet was like, you want to see my book?
Wait, no, we were just having a conversation. This was not a pitch.
Exactly. So she did, and she ended up representing her, which is really cool. And there's other ways you can kind of do that casually too. Like the first big RWA one I went to was, I say a million years ago, but it really was a long time ago. It was probably like at least 15 years ago. And it was back when Harlequin had a line called Red Dress Inc., and which was a chicklet line. And at the time I was working on a book, but I was nowhere near finished. But I wasn't sure where my book fit. And there was a panel, and they were all talking about things, and people go up and ask questions afterwards. And I went up and I asked the editor of that line, I said, I'm working on this book. I don't know if it's really chicklet or what it would actually be. And she's like, well, what is it? And I said, oh, it's like a modern Valley of the Dolls. And she said, oh, that sounds great. Why don't you send it to me? And I was like, oh, okay. Unfortunately, I never finished it, so I never sent it to her. But you can do things like that. That was unintentional, but you could network like that. And I will tell you, that's a little bit less stressful, way less stressful than actually doing a pitch. I would highly recommend doing a pitch, but it's normal to be petrified. Like I'm not usually shy about these things. I've worked in sales for years, but I was like a nervous wreck and my voice was shaking when I would do a pitch. It's just scary because it's like your baby, you're talking about it, and like there's so much on the line. But one thing I will say is most conferences, RWA especially, that has all of the editors and the agents, they almost always will also have a pitch workshop. So if you sign up to do a pitch and you're new, they'll also usually have a first timers like orientation. And so I would definitely say go to that, but do the pitch workshop, because that's really helpful. And give yourself a little cheat sheet, write down your stuff and anything you can do to make yourself not be nervous. But it's definitely worth doing. And I know tons and tons of people that have at our local conference that have pitched to an editor or an agent, gotten the agent, gotten a request from the editor, and sold as a result of going to the conference. So it's definitely worth doing.
I agree. I went a couple of years ago. I went to a Minnesota conference here, and I pitched to 2 agents. But they did have this opportunity at the conference to submit your first chapter, so you could sit in, and then they have a panel of agents and editors, and then they would read the first chapter or the first like page of the first chapter, and then the agents would like raise their hand if they were like, "No, I'd pass on this." And so I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll submit my chapter." Was a chance of them reading it. They read it, and then one of the agents that I was pitching to later that day like listened to it and raised her hand saying she would reject it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm pitching to her in like 10 minutes and she just told me she'd reject my manuscript. But I took that as an opportunity to sit down with her and be like, okay, so why would you reject it? What would you want it to see? All that sort of thing. And I think with agents pitching to them, since I have pitched to 2 of them, you realize that they're just people and, they just want to know about your story. And so you go in and you're just like, okay, your whole blurb right there. And then they're like, okay. So sometimes I think striking up conversations or saying, hey, asking questions, because really, if you're like me, you're going to say it in about a minute, your whole blurb. And then you're going to have like 15 minutes that you paid for to sit and talk to this agent. So that's when you ask them questions or they ask you questions. It's really just a dialogue about your book. It's kind of like what you would want to say to an agent if you could email them. You know what I mean? Like, and have a conversation back. Of course, most of the time you send your manuscript and then you just send a rejection back. But this is the opportunity for you to be like, well, this is what's going on and this is how the story works and all that other stuff. I didn't get an agent from my pitches, but it was really, I think most of the time, if you pay to pitch, they will request at least a partial. So
most conferences don't charge you to pitch.
Oh, well, mine charged me.
Some do. I know Thriller Fest does, but most of the RWA ones, all of the RWA ones don't. That's just kind of included.
So do you just have to sign up fast enough to get to the age? Okay.
Yes, exactly. And if you're too nervous, one other option too is if you're petrified at the idea of pitching, almost all of the conferences will have an agent editor panel, and you could just go and listen to that. And, you can kind of get a feel for which people you like. It's really helpful because I think a lot of, friends that have had agents, it's so much a personality. It's like dating. It's a personality fit.
Right. And I think you have to remember that agents and editors love to talk about books. Like, if someone wants to come up to me and talk to me about their book, do it. If you ever see me at a conference, come talk to me about Facebook ads or books, and I'd be happy to chat with you for as long as possible. So I think we kind of forget that too, that they're humans and approachable, and you could find them just, if you get stuck in the elevator, start talking about what they're looking for or what they're enjoying. I hear agents love to talk about their most recent book that they're going to, that they've just sold. So strike up a conversation and then don't just go with them and be like, okay, here's my blurb, strike up a conversation. And like you said, naturally comes in and they ask you about your book, things happen.
Yeah.
It's always funny.
Go ahead.
I beat you, Judy. No, I'm just kidding. You go ahead.
Are there looking for books. So they want to hear pitches. Like they want to find the next big thing and maybe you have it.
So I was going to say, I've actually been to a couple of conferences where they have started out by asking people not to follow agents to the bathroom and corner them in a stall. Which
people actually have done that.
Yeah, I think, wow. Like,
talk about personal space.
I can't help but wonder if they start to feel like a piece of meat, like everybody's just after them to sell something, and that would really bother me. So I really think that the more genuine conversations that they can have, the better they're going to open up and so that's one thing that's fun about being an indie when I go to conferences is I feel comfortable talking to agents and editors because I'm not trying to sell them anything at this point, and so they can have some interaction with people who are just, trying to sell something. So I don't know, but over time, if you go to enough conferences and you see them enough places and you build up a relationship, then if something comes down and you've written it, you're approaching them kind of from a little bit of a more personal angle than, complete sales pitch, and that's all. I don't know.
Well, I had a friend.
Go ahead.
I had a friend last year at the Storymakers conference with me, and she pitched to an agent or an editor, and the editor was like, yeah, we probably wouldn't publish that book, but this other company might. And so we were sitting at lunch, and she's like, Amy, that editor of the other company is right over there sitting by herself. And I was like, well, go talk to her. And she's like, what? No. And I'm like, do it. She's alone. She's probably bored. She looked bored. So she finally got the courage, went over there. And she didn't pitch the book. She was just said, this is this, I just pitched to this person. They said you guys might be more interested in it. Is this something you were looking for? Would this be something that you would publish? And so she opened up a dialogue more just as a question instead of, will you buy my book? And so later on, when if she goes to email her, she can say, hey, I was the crazy lady who talked to you at lunch and asked if something you'd be interested in. I think they see so many people and talk to so many people that if you have that, I was a crazy person who cornered you in the bathroom. No, they probably like restraining order. But, if you can have some sort of conversation that they can refer back to, then just, this was my book, don't you remember it? I think that will help and go a lot longer for when you reach out to them.
Definitely.
Isn't it ironic that authors are such introverts, and yet we put ourselves in the position of not only going to a conference with hundreds of strangers, but having to talk to somebody like an agent or an editor or an author that we really admire. And I think that is something that freaks a lot of people out about conferences. So I don't know if that's one of the questions, but we should probably talk about that a little bit.
I think the thing about that, though, to remember is that everybody, I'd say probably 80% of the people at a conference are just like you. They're all introverts too. So it makes it easier to talk to people because everybody's kind of the same.
Yeah, and you all have books in common, so you can say, what are you writing?
Exactly. I think too, it also helps if you have a conference buddy. Like if you go with at least one person that you know, so then you've got somebody that you can just kind of hang out with a little bit. It's harder if you go completely by yourself to a conference. I mean, you can do it. I've done it. But it's a little more fun if you go with somebody.
Right. Well, I was at the Minnesota conference I went to where I pitched. Like I was by myself and like extremely pregnant. Maybe that's why the agent was like, oh, this crazy pregnant lady. But I just like sat by with two people at lunch and just started talking about, and like the first thing you talk about is like, oh, what do you write? Oh, I write this. Exactly. What do you write? And you talk about your journey and you talk about what you're doing and your kids and your family. And it just starts from there. And it's like the best icebreaker right there is, what do you just memorize that, learn it in different languages, and you'll be fine. So someone was asking us about this. I haven't been to a conference yet, trying to talk myself into buying a plane ticket to Omaha for April, which you totally should do because we're all going to be there. I'd love a newbie's guide to conferences, what to expect and how to network. So.
What to expect. I mean, I think you just kind of hit on like the main thing as a newbie. Just take everything in, as simple as bring layers. So you have different things to wear. A lot of times at these conferences, some of the rooms will be cold. So you might want to have a sweater with you. But take it all in, get the conference program, kind of see what you want to do, and go to as many things as possible. Sometimes you might find that some of the things you don't think will be interesting actually turn out to be. And when you go to the meals, most conferences have meals. So that's a great opportunity to sit with people you don't know, get to know people. A lot of conversations happen in the bars. People congregate after the sessions, or on Data Novelist Inc., people congregate at the Tiki Bar on the beach. So there's, even if you don't drink, it's still a good place to be out. And that's where you might find it easier to talk to editors and agents if they're relaxing, and people just seem a little bit more open. So that's really what I would advise anybody. Just try to do as many things as possible, at least the first day, because you won't know what you really like or not like until you start going to different classes. Some people don't think that they will like going to workshops, but I've always kind of had the attitude that if I can come away from a conference and I learn one thing that I can implement, and I always learn more than one, but if I learn at least one good thing that I didn't know, then it's worth going. And you probably always will at a conference.
Well, and I think, go ahead, Michelle.
Something I'd add to that I've learned for myself, and maybe other people will have the same success. If I go into a class or a conference in whole with the particular project that I'm working on or outlining or something like that, then it helps me to apply what I'm learning in a direct way, and I learn it better, rather than me thinking, like if there's a class on theme or show don't tell or whatever. I love craft classes. Then if I'm applying it to whatever story I'm working on, then I actually do a little bit of workshopping. Like I go to the class, I take notes, I go back to my hotel, and I workshop it a little bit, and it just sinks all the information in a better way so that I retain it and learn it better. So that's something that I've learned. Like I'll even take notes. Like if I went to a really great class on theme, and my notes weren't just what the speaker was saying. My notes was, this could be the theme in my book, and this is how the theme could carry through and how it could resolve. And so by that way, I'm sitting there, that's how I like to learn in a conference.
When I think for a conference too, even if we are introverts, how you present yourself to other people who are introverts is really important. So even if you're very shy, still smiling and greeting people and answering questions people ask you is really important. And then the other thing, especially for me, if you ever meet me at a conference, tell me who you are. Because sometimes people come up to me and they're like, hi. And I'm like, hi, I don't know who you are. And like we have conversations back and forth, and I just don't want to be like, what's your name? Because sometimes, your name tag is flipped. So, and especially if you write under a pen name too, that's really important to be like, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I write under this. Do you recognize my face? Or we should just go by according to our books. Like, here's what my book looks like. Now you know who I am. Because that's really how we, talk to each other over the internet. It's not so much, this is my face. It's more, this is my book. Will you, promote it or help me with it or something like that.
Or this is my Facebook profile picture.
Which looks nothing like me. So Maria Martinez says, should you have something published before attending?
You don't have to. I mean, I've been to lots of conferences, many where I hadn't even finished writing a single book yet. So no, you don't have to have anything published.
Perfect. I think if you go with, like Michelle said, if you go with a project in mind, then that will kind of help you get some things from the classes that you can then come back and use, apply. I would say it's probably better to have some sort of something started. But I guess you could go if you were like, I just want to write a book. So I'm just going to start taking classes and go to conferences and see. But it's more easier to have something that you can apply back to what you've learned. But don't let that stop you from going to a conference if you really want to, because sometimes they're just fun to go to. And then Janelle Daniels asks, what are your favorites and why?
My absolute favorite is Novelist Inc. I just love it. I love the size of it. I love the location. I see all my friends and I meet new people there too. And they always have a really nice mix of workshops. I'd say aside from that, I like the RWA ones too. They're awesome. Every single year I go to our small local one, and I see people that I've known for years from I used to be a member of the RWA local chapter. I'm not now just because I just don't get there. It's a little far from where I live. But I always go to the conference, and it's always a nice conference. And then RWA, depending on where it is, I go. So this summer I'll probably go because it's going to be in New York, and that's always fun. And that's another thing too, like with the conferences. One thing I like about the Novelist Inc. one, like I said, is the location. The beach is there. There's lots of great restaurants. We always try to do stuff like that. In New York City, we always it's right in Times Square. The location is awesome. It's a Marriott right in Times Square. So we'll go stand in line and get half price Broadway tickets to a show. So we'll get some sightseeing in while we're there too, because you have your nights free. Most of the stuff happens during the day. At the Novelist Inc., they have some sessions at night too. And they have lots of different events. Like they do karaoke night, and they have different fun things that get people kind of like mingling, like on a more of a social type of a fun thing. Karaoke is like a highlight. It's hysterical.
Mhm.
Like at the vendors, like Damon from Book Funnel is a phenomenal singer. So he'll get up there and he'll belt out Love Shack. And there's a whole bunch of them. So that's just a really fun thing.
Well, and I think that you touched on that it's not just agents and editors you're going to talk to. You're going to find people who, like what someone was talking about, people from Kobo Go and from Amazon are there.
Absolutely. So to give you an idea, so at the RWA one, particularly the one in New York, all of the major vendors are there. Usually it's Apple will be there, Nook, Kobo, and they'll all do spotlights. So they'll have like a room set aside where they'll talk about what they can do. They'll talk to you about upcoming promos you might be able to get involved in. And it's just good to kind of put to meet some of these reps there. That's helpful. Like going to a conference. I think, which one was it? So I went to a conference that's called I think it's In Detail. I'm blanking on the name, but it was the first time they ever did it. It was in Palm Springs. Now they do it in LA, and it's more of a reader conference. But they did have some vendors there, and I met with somebody from Apple. And so what that did was that got me on their Apple list, so that they send out a list of promos that are coming up, and then you can apply to be in the different promos. So, but you only get on that list if you somehow get on their radar with big sales, or they meet you or whatever. So that's just like one little thing that could happen at a conference. That's nice.
Have you ever seen any people from BookBub?
Yes. Oh, they're always at the conferences. Yeah, they're local here too. They're actually located here in Boston.
$25 gift card that pushed my next book through, right? Like under the table. Exactly.
Yeah, very interesting because they take a lot of questions, and the question that always comes up is, how do I get a BookBub? And they always explain, how it's a lot of it is just timing, and they look at all the submissions that come in that week, and they kind of rank them, and they look at the slots and they just fill them, and you might get lucky and they might not have a lot of people in your genre that week and you get a slot, or you might be out because they just gave it to somebody that hit the New York Times list, and then you try again.
Yeah, that's super cool. I think just going to conferences and trying to get the most out of all of it is probably the most important. I was going to ask you a question about RW. Oh, and I was going to say conferences are not necessarily just writing conferences. People go to conferences that are like Comic-Con or sci-fi cons and things like that. Like, so not only as an author go to conferences to learn, but to also connect with your readers. So I'm not sure, does RWA do romance readers go, or is it just more for writing?
So what they do is it's pretty much just writers, but they have, I think it's usually the first night, they have a literacy signing. And so that's like a huge signing. So that's one way that you could interact with readers. But I haven't been to this conference, but there used to be one called RT that was huge. Now it's called something else, but that's a huge reader conference, and it's mostly romance. And I have not gone to that, but there's people that go to that and they love it.
That's the one where people bring the models for their book covers to interact.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of parties, and they dress up. And
this sounds amazing. Sounds like I need to go. And it will all be like, all of us sweet romance authors will just be like surrounding this one model because we all use the same guy because only so many people have shirts on. Oh, you met that model? Well, here's all 50 authors who have used him as their cover.
One thing they did that was actually fun, though, at RWA, and I think this is San Antonio, they had just a fun thing where they did have some models there, and they had the models posing and taking pictures with the authors. So that was kind of fun.
That's cool. I think I watched the Amazon video that was called Love Between the Covers or something like that. And they had like panels of women who just stand in line, to get Nora Roberts to sign their book. And I was like, and I think they were at RWA. So that must have been for that.
They do that. They do. Well, okay. So that's another thing they do. They have, Yeah, at the literacy signing, they have the big names like that, but they also have individual publisher signings where like Nora might be there, and Nora's always there. She always does at least like a chat with Nora Roberts, and that alone is worth going to because she's great.
I think when I saw her, I was like, I did not picture you being, Nora Roberts. I guess, just kind of like you have this like different view of what people look like in your mind. And then you see them and you're like, oh, okay. You look more down to earth than somebody who owns a mountain,
Yeah. And she's got her smoker's voice. Yeah. She's a character.
Yes.
She's like, there's no secret to writing. You just sit down and write. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Okay. When you're worth that much money, you can say that.
Exactly.
Well, cool. I think that was all of our questions. Did we have any on the YouTube channel?
Not really, but I have one. So one of the things that I'm starting to get into is that the trying to find the balance between going to all the conferences I want to go to and balancing like taking time away from my family and home obligations and all that sort of stuff. So like, how do you balance that? Because I mean, there are like 6 conferences I want to go to, and I feel like I'm already slimming myself down to go to 3 this year. You know what I mean? Do you ever have that problem?
Yeah, there was one year where I went to too many. So I pretty much, everybody's different, but I find that I like to do like 2, maybe like 2 or 3. Like this past year, I was going to go to Thriller Fest, and I was booked to go to 20 books, but I canceled that because it was just too much. Because when I come back, that's one thing about 20 books too, is that it's like a couple of weeks, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks after NINC, and I make a vacation out of NINC. So I go down a couple of days early, I stay a couple of days later, and so I'm down there for a good solid week. So when I came back, I just didn't want to turn around and head out, west again. So I think for me, like 2 a year is good, maybe 3, depending. So like 2 actual conferences and maybe like a get together type smaller thing. But that's just me. I don't like to get on planes. I don't really love to travel. I like to go places, but I don't like the actual getting there.
Especially when you take really like early flights or really late flights, because you're like, I'm going to save money. And then you curse yourself like, why did I do that? I'm going to pay extra. I have to get up at 3 a.m. to get on the plane.
Yep.
Well, cool. Do you have any words of wisdoms for our listeners, Pam? Since everybody said that you are the publishing and marketing, you give great publishing and marketing advice. Any advice you can give our listeners?
Specific
about
to like
anything. Anything you want. What like give us the pearls of wisdom from Pam Kelley.
I mean, I would just say probably the best thing I would say is just take your time and don't rush, especially with your first book. Make sure you get your book the way you want it to be, have a really good cover, and have a plan. Even if you can't do much, have a plan. Like I see a lot of people that write their book and then they jump on 20 books. They're like, what do I do now? Or they just throw the book up there and then like, oh, I really haven't done anything. Even if you don't do much, at least do the things that don't cost a lot of money. Like, your friends, make friends with other authors so that then they can mail your book out. Do some newsletter swaps. That's, what you guys say really works with the slow launch. I recently saw that with a friend that did a slow launch, and we're like, oh, that actually works really well. And it doesn't cost a lot of money to do that. So, and focus. I think and I'm like the queen of not always doing what I say, but when I do, it works. Especially if you're trying to get going and ramp up, pick a genre, stay with it, and get at least 4 or 5 books out before you switch and do something else. You can totally switch then. But like I found that when I was launching my historicals, I focused on those and I didn't do any contemporary for a while. I just focused on getting those out. And they ramped up quickly, and, they did pretty well because I was focusing and I got them out, like every 30 days or so. It just makes a difference, I think. But also learn ads too, because then if you get so that you're pretty good with ads, and it's not that difficult and you don't have to spend a lot of money. But I had one period where I went 5 months between releases because I was still working full time too. And I managed to keep my books up with Facebook ads until I got the next release out. It's not as easy to do that now, but you can do things like that. That helps.
I think it's not as cheap to do it now.
Exactly.
Is really how it is. It's still easy, but it's still not that. I think the days of just, making, 8, 9, 100% back is kind of probably, or at least maybe I'm doing something wrong because I'm like, I don't know how people make 9% or 900% back ROI. Like, I don't know what's going on, but yeah, I agree. Well, cool. Well, thank you. Do you have anything else you want to say, or any of the ladies?
Just that the last thing I'll just say is I think that, people worry that they've missed the market and that it's too late to get in. But it's definitely not. I mean, I see new people all the time with their first book that if they do it right and they do it thoughtfully and it's written to market, they can do just as well as anybody else.
Definitely. I definitely think it is right. Quality books. There's always a need for quality books. And somebody said this has been a time where there have been more readers than in past times before. I think it's just the availability of books and the fact that you can just get it on your phone. And how many times are you traveling somewhere and you're bored and you're like, get my phone out and I'm done with Facebook scrolling. So let's go do something else. And
even my husband read one of my books on a recent trip.
Right. And like I say, you capture that 1 or 2 readers into you, and then they're going to be readers for everybody else, and they'll be lifelong readers. And interestingly enough, I was reading a statistics that said actually it's the younger generations, like 18 to 24, the Generation Z or whatever they call them. They're the ones that are reading more than anybody else. And everyone thought, oh, no, it's the older generations. No, because everyone's got jobs and work and kids and family. The younger generations are the ones that are doing a lot of the reading. So there is hope that there is always going to be people wanting to read books. And just like I go see movies every day, not every day. I don't go see movies every day. Like every weekend, people are going to want to read a book as often as possible. So you're right. It is not dead. All right.
Okay, let's plug the April conference before we get off, because that's going to be like the best conference for introverts and Writing Gal fans to come to Victorine.
It'll be awesome because it's a small conference. I mean, we're going to cap it at like 125 to 150 people. So it'll sell out if we go over that because we don't have the space. But it'll be awesome. It'll be nice. Intimate setting. It's going to be in Omaha, Nebraska. So if you want to know more about it, go to our Facebook page, and it's one of the announcements pinned at the top, or you can go to nebraskawriters.org. That's nebraskawriters.org, and it's right on the front page there, and you can look at when it'll be. It'll be April 11th through the 13th, and that on the 11th, it'll be a writer's retreat with the 4 of us Writing Gals. And then the 12th and the 13th will be the actual conference where we will be teaching classes, and it'll be really awesome. So come.
Yay. And make sure to subscribe below so that you get a message every time we go live, and join us at the Writing Gals on Facebook. And we also just started a new Writing Gals critique group. So if that's something you're interested in, check that out as well. And we will see you next week, where we will talk about something. What are we talking about? Do we know? Maybe taxes.
It'll be a surprise. I don't know.
Maybe we should have a podcast on planning ahead.
Yes, preparation is key. But thank you for staying up late with us, guys. And thanks, Pam, for joining us and giving us all your wisdom.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.